Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca and today we are going to be looking at my June 2020 bullet journal spread. Before we get into showing what I did for June, I wanted to review May very quickly. So I did end up using this big calendar quite a bit, and also the notes. These were both easily my two most used pages. And just as I sort of expected, these weekly pages did not get used really at all. So in my June spread, I'm going to not be doing that just to not waste my time, really. I did utilize the activity page quite a bit, so I will be doing this again. I think that it's really important that if you are bullet journaling, that you are just observing yourself and your habits with it and eliminating things that you're not using. I see a lot of people using things like mood trackers and things like that, and I just would not have a use for that. And I'm also realizing that I also don't have a use for these weekly spreads. So let's see what I will get up to in June. I'm starting off my monthly spread with my cover page, and this month I'm trying to replicate sort of what I did for March by using book pages and little pictures of birds from a book that I have. And I don't feel really weird about using book pages because this is a thrifted book, and actually it is Pride and Prejudice, which is a wonderful book, but I decided to just use some of the pages from the back of the book that I probably wouldn't use anyway, even if I decided to read the book. But all I'm doing is putting Mod Podge on the back of these. I also used Mod Podge last month with the magazine sheets, and there was a lot of wrinkling that happened with that, but I'm thinking that it was because the magazine paper is so thin, and if I really wanted to keep a smooth collage with magazine paper, I'd have to use something completely different. I have in the past used glue sticks, and that was a lot better, but I couldn't find a glue stick, and since I'm staying home, I'm not going to go out and get one just for this. So Mod Podge will work just fine, especially since I'm working with a little bit thicker of paper now. The next thing that I'm going to work on is looking through this thrifted book with a bunch of different pictures of birds and find a page that sticks out to me and just cut out a few of the birds, and I am going to use this page for this entire spread. And something that I like to do in collages and just setups like this is cut out the object so that there is no white space, so it kind of looks like they're floating along, and it looks really cool when it is glued down. And the last thing for this page is the label. I'm just using this old shipping paper from an Amazon package. Great way to reuse this kind of stuff, and it's already perfectly crinkled, which is perfect for the aesthetic. I like to use the edge of a book to give it a nice crisp rip. I wanted it to be a nice rectangle. And then for the lettering, I'm just doing block letters, keeping it very simple. I do use cursive a little bit later on, but I'm not much of a calligrapher, and I know that I for sure can do block letters pretty well. And also something that I'm realizing about doing my spreads this way is it feels a little bit more foolproof. So if I screw up, I don't have to completely rip out the page. I can just sort of pull off that specific element. So if I totally hated the way that my handwriting looked when I put June, I could just very easily pull it off and start over. Next up to work on is my monthly calendar spread, which, as I've said before, is one of my most used pages. So I am going to use this Amazon recycled paper again to create my monthly spread. And since the page was a little bit oddly shapen, it took a little bit of finagling to figure out what orientation I wanted to use it in. And then I flipped back to my March spread where I did something very, very similar to this with just a little bit of thicker paper. And I'm going to match up all of the lines because I just feel like that's the most efficient thing to do, so I'm not having to remeasure everything. I don't remember this March spread being particularly even, but it didn't look bad, so I just decided to completely replicate it. And then from there I penciled in all of the lines and then later on filled them in with black Sharpie. And this time I used Sharpie rather than using my calligraphy pencils or calligraphy markers, and that worked a lot better. There wasn't any residue when I dragged the ruler along, and some people suggested using like a metal ruler or just waiting a few more seconds, but the Sharpie did not give me those issues and I was still able to go pretty quickly. After I finished creating the calendar page, I glued it all down and actually accidentally made a glue bee. Check that out. That was totally an accident, but it was really cool. The paper was a little bit crinkly to begin with, and of course I really liked this style, but I did have to make sure that I went around and flattened everything out so there weren't any bubbles. So you can see me doing that here with the end of my paintbrush. And then all there was left to do was to fill out the calendar, which honestly is the part that stresses me out the very most out of all things in bullet journaling, because you get to this point where you've completely made the calendar and you could completely screw it up with one number being off. So I'm always very careful when I fill this out, and I'm constantly looking back at the calendar on my computer. The next spread that I'm going to be working on is my notes spread, and like I said before, this is one of my most used spreads because I always use it for work and just things like that to write down things that I should remember. I'm much more of a written memory type of person, so I really try to write things down physically. I do use notes in my phone, but definitely also like to do a lot of physical writing. And with this page, I decided to have a design at the top and also a little design at the bottom, so I was able to use a couple more of these birds. I just love using these birds in this notebook. I think that it looks so cute. And the last page in my spread is my activity log. I wanted to, switch it up. So I'm doing one long strip of paper and I'm going to write out the word activity on it. If you didn't see last month's spread, this activity page is basically just a place for me to chart down any physical activity that I do. I find that I am much more likely to do things when I can cross it off on a list or write down that I did it. So this is just a small way that I get myself motivated to work out or be active or go out on a hike. I know that it's a small thing, but I don't know. I just have found a way to manipulate myself into being active, especially during times like right now when some of us are still sheltering in place and just kind of in general not going out as much. It's been very helpful for me. Alrighty guys, so that would be the end of my very simple bullet journal setup. This month feels very minimal, but I'm going to try it out and see what happens. I have really found bullet journaling to be a wonderful thing for me right now because it just gives me another reason to be creative. So I hope that this video was maybe inspiring for you to get creative even in the little things in your life. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.